How's that for a slice of fried gold?
You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
I'll be back.
Just a flesh wound. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Take your sticking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Virtual insanity. Am I gonna get sued for that? Am I allowed to sing that?
Maybe.
I don't want Jamiroquai getting me.
You don't want him sliding up to your front door with papers. You've been served in civil suit against me.
The subpoena's gonna be under his big hat.
Oh, that's great.
Reference that none of our younger listeners will understand.
This guy, he gets stranded on a desert island, and the only thing on the boat with him that survives is a pig and a dog. And then he's just like hanging out on the sand one day, just wondering how he's going to get off the island. He doesn't know. But as he's sitting there, he starts looking at the pig, and he's like, it's been a long time. Pig starts looking pretty good. Starts getting kind of lonely. And there's that pig just sitting there. He's like, maybe I'll just scoot a little closer to the pig. And he does. He starts rubbing its back. Then he gets up and he's going to maybe take advantage of the pig. But the dog gets angry and it starts growling at him. Like he wants him to back away from the pig. And he's just like, oh my God, like what's going on with this dog? This dog's going nuts. And so he does. He backs away from the pig. The dog calms down. He starts noticing that over the next like week or two. Every time he gets close to the pig, the dog gets angry. The guy's like, fine, whatever. After about a month, he's sitting there. He just needs something, you know, and there's that pig right there. So he reaches over, he starts massaging the pig's feet. And then he like moves his hand up its leg. He like moves in. All of a sudden, dog's on him, just like growling, snarling, just like attacking him. He's like, fuck, get this dog off me. And he like backs up and he just walks away. The next day, he's sitting out on the beach. And it's just lonely and sad. And another boat happens by and crashes against the island. He looks at it, he sees movement, and a woman gets off the boat. It's an extremely hot woman, just beautiful, buxom woman. And she walks over, she's like, I don't know where I am. And he's like, it's okay. Thank God you're here. I was losing my mind. I was going to do some crazy stuff. Can you hold this dog for a little while?
Well, hello.
And welcome to Cinema Shock, the podcast exploring the stories behind your favorite cult genre films. We do all the research so that you don't have to. This is the last podcast you'll ever need about virtuosity. And I'm one of your hosts, Gary Horn.
Probably the only podcast you'll ever need about virtuosity. And I'm your other host, Justin Bishop.
And I'm writer-comedian Mr. Todd A. Davis. Thank you for joining us for the latest episode in our series, Virtual Insanity, the Cyber Thrillers of 1995.
The joke sounded like something that Norm Macdonald would have told.
Very Norm Macdonald joke, yeah.
Feel as though maybe that might be where I heard it. So,
although it would take you 20 more minutes to tell that joke.
Yeah.
You know what? Actually, now that I think about it, where I actually heard that joke was Rue McClanahan telling it to Betty White.
Wow. Even better.
Set of the Golden Girls.
Oh, that's great.
Even better. All right. So in our last episode, we discussed Brett Leonard's background and how, as a burgeoning filmmaker, he moved to California. He ended up falling into a crowd that included some of the most influential people in the realm of an emerging new technology called virtual reality. And as a technophile, it was only natural that the tech that he was learning about from his friends would make its way into his films, which led to him directing The Lawnmower Man, which was the first film to ever feature virtual reality as a major plot device, and the film that introduced really the term virtual reality to most audiences. And so when Paramount began developing a script called Virtuosity, it made sense that Leonard would be the guy that they'd seek out to direct it. But by the time that Leonard was brought onto the film, it had already been in the works for a while. The project had been the brainchild of screenwriter Eric Berndt, whose only previous credit at that time had been a high concept action movie called Surviving the Game, which is a play on the 1924 Richard Connell short story, The Most Dangerous Game. You guys are at least somewhat familiar with it, I assume. The Most Dangerous Game, if not Surviving the Game.
Yeah.
Surviving the Game starred Ice-T, Rutger Hauer, and Gary Busey. Incredible cast. And it really honestly is. And was directed by genre stalwart Ernest R. Dickerson, who I love. I love that guy. He did Demon Knight, which I love. He was also a longtime cinematographer for Spike Lee. Cool dude. The movie didn't make much of a splash at the box office, but it did perform pretty well on home video. But that didn't really matter because by time that movie had before that movie had even hit movie theater screens, Byrne had already started brainstorming his next project.
It is weird, but I will say that I remember renting Surviving the Game on multiple occasions.
Me too. I liked it. I thought it was cool. I had never read The Most Dangerous Game at that point. I read it at some point in school. I don't remember when. The concept of it, I mean, it's basically, if you haven't seen it, it's about rich people hunting poor people. I mean, that's the general conceit.
It was wild. It had Ice-T as a homeless guy being hunted for sport. Rutger Hauer, not unlike
and Charles
Russell
S. Dutton.
Crowe.
Charles S. Dutton's in it, which I didn't mention.
Yes.
Yeah, from Alien 3.
Rutger Hauer's chewing the scenery like it's this last meal. Gary Busey, like we should say,
just doing
like
the Gary Busey thing.
Unhinged, questionable legality, narratively unkillable. Naturally, there were like two Ice-T movies back then that I remember seeing multiple times, and it was this one and Mean Guns. If you've never seen Mean Guns with Christopher Lambert.
No, I don't know that one.
It's almost like a bunch of criminals get locked in a building and they all have to kill each other, and the last one left alive gets to walk out. Basically, it's that kind of movie.
There's a lot of like those weird, like just kind of high concept movies that were coming out around this time that was like those mid-budget, not quite straight to video, but almost straight to video. One that I love that I always group in there is No Escape. Have you seen that one with Ray Liotta?
Yes.
Where he gets like, he's a prisoner who gets sent to this like prison island where the prisoners have formed essentially like tribes, and it's a cool movie. I rewatched it about a year ago probably, and it held up to what I remember. Like I remember always liking it. It's fun. I just love that there's a specific genre of, or not even a specific genre, but any kind of like action, sci-fi, and horror, but especially action and sci-fi movies from like that early to mid 90s era, that kind of mid-budget, not quite a blockbuster, but because those movies don't get made anymore. And they used to be kind of like, you could count on a bunch of those coming out throughout the year in between the big blockbusters, including the movie that we're talking about today, Virtuosity, is really one of those movies. It wouldn't exist today, not in this form. It would go straight to fucking Netflix or something. But it used to be where a big studio like Paramount would put out these like kind of smaller, not low budget, but smaller, not blockbuster budget movies that were R-rated, made for adults, and they could make a decent penny at the box office. That's more what I'm nostalgic for than anything else. Is just a time when these types of movies would get a wide release, like a Surviving the Game, like that you'd be lucky if that popped up on a streaming service today. Like there's no way that's going to get a theatrical release in 2025.
But God bless him. Here you got Bert able to make that movie, and then naturally his next idea is just like, what if I took the worst traits of all of history's serial killers and put them in a VR supervillain who escapes into the real world and gets horny about chaos? And you know what? Fine, make it. Do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, the inspiration for his next screenplay started actually as a conversation with his father, who was somehow connected. I don't think he was a teacher there or a professor there, but he was somehow connected with the folks at Carnegie Mellon University. And his father told him about some research that was being done at the university in the realm of artificial intelligence, which, that's kind of a concept that was considered mere science fiction to most people at that time. And Burnt was pretty intrigued. He's like, this might be the spark that he'd been looking for, the seed that could grow into his next script. So he decides to visit the university, where he meets a professor who was conducting AI experiments on campus, like in the basement of one of the buildings, like real weird. Like this is like the professor that all the other professors kind of like look at with a little bit of a side eye. He's probably got hair going everywhere. And he's like, it basically is Brent Spiner's character from Independence Day is what I'm imagining. So the professor showed Burnt these small devices that he had called woggles, which Burnt described as looking like little Pac-Men. Now, the professor explained that he considered Woggles to be alive because he had programmed them to have personalities, which honestly makes him sound insane. Yes, my Woggles, they're alive. Each one of these has its own personality. This one's Jeff. He's the funny one. This one's Tina. She's really into true crime. But at the time, their interactions were kind of limited. Basically, they would just bump into each other in their little box and kind of learn that way. So, they have personalities, but they're all idiots, I guess. But as the professor explained, over time, he expected the technology to get better and the Woggles would grow smarter with each iteration. And eventually, he said, they'd be given a voice. And then later versions could even look human.
So to rewind, Carnegie Mellon, a professor with God tier, I swear this isn't a Bond villain layer vibes, tell screenwriter Eric Burt that his cute little Pac-Man blobs are alive. Not metaphorically.
Literally alive.
From an Entertainment Weekly article, because they had personalities, because they were learning, because, and I quote, they'd eventually be given a voice. Just to clarify, this man straight up said, I'm breeding little digital dudes in a box and I can't wait till they talk back to me. What the hell was happening at Carnegie Mellon in the 1990s? That's what I want to know. Like ethics, adult supervisors.
There's a reason that this guy's lab is in a basement. Right. He is the Dr. Herbert West of Carnegie Mellon University is what he is.
I was going to say, this is how Chud happens. We're 3 software updates away from 5 nights at Carnegie Mellon. What is happening?
Yeah. I mean, it all sounds ominous as fuck. Like, yeah, they're going to be given a voice and then they might look human later on. Yeah, that sounds insane, which was sort of Burnt's reaction as well. And his response to the professor was, yeah, and eventually one of them is going to get smart enough that it's going to want to get out.
That's the most casual omen of digital doom that I've ever heard in my life. It's just saying it like you're predicting my toddler is going to want juice eventually. It's like, oh yeah, this one will want freedom and probably guns too. What if these adorable little data blobs wanted to fuck, kill, make some synth beats out of people's tortured screams?
But that was sort of like the light bulb moment. Like that was the starting point for his script. An AI that gets smart enough that it wants to escape its programming. Never mind that James Cameron kind of did that same thing more than a decade earlier when he invented Skynet. We're not going to mention that, but we're on to something here. The only question is, why would someone build an AI that was so smart that it would want to get out? What would be the reason for creating a program with that capability? That's what he had to figure out.
Eric Burt, the man who watched Short Circuit and thought, not enough homicide. That gave the virtuosity idea. One little pixel freak gets too smart, gets tired of his code, decides, I deserve legs. And I want to stab things. And look, sure, James Cameron kind of already did that with Skynet, sure, but Skynet didn't wear zoot suits, dance in nightclubs, or flirt like a bisexual vampire on cocaine. So Sid 6.7 is
But
different.
If only they had. If only. Now, Burt wasn't quite sure what the answer to this question of why would somebody do this was, but finding the answer to that would be the key to unlocking the rest of his story. So while this whole idea is kind of rolling around in his head, Burt had a lunch meeting with a guy named Gary Lucchesi, who's a producer at Paramount. He told Lucchesi of his idea of a rogue AI program and also about this kind of storytelling dilemma that he was having. But then during the course of this conversation, they're kind of talking it over, and he had another sort of eureka moment. He said, what if this program was created as a training simulation for law enforcement officers? What if the program had to be intelligent so that the cops could be ready for anything and anyone who came their way?
So when I was at the academy,
I knew this shit's going to come up. Did you train with a virtual reality program?
Sort of. They had a room. Do you remember in high school you had those portable classrooms, outside away from the main building?
Yeah.
They had something like that, but you walk in and the room's mostly empty, but one wall is nothing but a screen. Floor to ceiling, wall to wall, it is a screen. And they gave you a special gun, and a trainer would sit at a computer and input your responses into this computer, and the scenario plays out on the screen in front of you. So when I'm talking to a suspect, when I'm talking to a hostage, what I say matters, and the scenario progresses accordingly.
Really?
And yeah.
One of the scenarios is a guy in a hoodie with a little baggie of weed, and you've got to hit him with your nightstick as hard as you can. And it's like one of those punching bag things where it just like measures how hard you hit. So high score.
I actually maybe cut this next part out. I actually killed the suspect. I killed the suspect.
Well, this is a virtual suspect, and you're no longer.
It was a virtual suspect, but I put the bullet like
on purpose.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Glad you're not a cop.
Denzel killed a civilian in his first run through, probably wasn't his first.
Denzel kills a civilian in real life in the movie on the train. Well, actually, no. It turned out that Sid did it. Yeah, he tricked him.
It came from the back.
Yeah.
Anyway, like if that stuff was happening now, well, first of all, it would hit social media immediately, and then he would be demonized. But then you'd have all the internet cops going, "No, look at the explosion on the front of the chest. No, that came from behind." And then
also they're going to do an autopsy and they're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so they have this lunch, Lucchesi and Burnt, and he tells him this idea. And Lucchesi jokingly told Burnt that he half owned the idea since Burnt had thought of it while they were having lunch. So like, yeah, that's mine. Like you gotta let me make the movie. And before long, Burnt had turned his idea into a screenplay. Yada yada yada. We've written a screenplay, and it was sold to, well, who else but Paramount, with Lucchesi on as the producer.
That's how you do movie producing right there. Yep. That's how you make business deals. Just being in the right place. Somebody comes up with an idea and it's like, I half own that because you wouldn't have been inspired unless I was.
I feel like so
here.
much of like being a producer is just going to lunches with people and networking. And
honestly, that seems like what I should have done. I missed my
going
calling.
to lunch
I
for a
just
living.
Need to eat with people. Yeah, exactly. Back to the movie. Let's break down the logic. We're making a VR sim to train cops. The sim needs to be unpredictable and as evil as possible. Let's give it the minds of all the serial killers, advanced AI, human form, agency. Let's act real surprised when it wants to break out and kill people. That's the goal of this movie. It's like building a crash test dummy, giving it emotions and trauma and a knife, and saying, "Whoa, didn't think it would get violent."
I really love how they visualize that it's a bunch of serial killer personalities in there by showing this like crudely animated Charles Manson face and John Wayne Gacy with the clown makeup on.
Yeah.
And it shows all of them floating, and then like evil lasers shoot out of their mouths into like the face of Sid and to create Sid. Because how else are you going to get that point across to audiences?
Yeah, they blasted the names across. So I remember seeing like Saddam Hussein and stuff. I found a list of everybody.
Are they all real?
David Koresh was in there too. I don't know if it's because he was a fan of Lawnmower Man.
It was an homage.
A shout out.
Shout out to my boy David Koresh. So with the film actively in development, the search for a director began. Although it wouldn't take long for Paramount to find their man, Burnt's script had not only worked in the concept of artificial intelligence, a technology that, like I said, most people didn't understand at the time, but he also worked in the idea that the police training simulation would exist in the world of virtual reality. And Brett Leonard, of course, was one of the few directors in Hollywood who actually understood the concept of virtual reality, as he had proven with The Lawnmower Man.
Did The Lawnmower Man make $250 million flipping off Stephen King? And let's get him. Of course he says yes, because he's got another chance to play God in cyberspace. And so I know we're going to go into casting now for this movie, and we've been talking about Russell Crowe and Denzel too, and I know there's some other interesting stuff, but I did want to say, you sent me an interview with Kelly Lynch in AV Club. That was really good, and it's just kind of a career retrospective for her. But per that interview, one thing I noticed is that she mentioned in Virtuosity that, at least to her understanding, it sounds like this movie was written to be a film starring Mel Gibson.
Yeah, she mentions that in that interview, and I didn't see that anywhere else, and I wonder how. Like, I don't know that they ever talked to Mel Gibson, though. Like, I wonder if that's just like Eric Burnt, when he was writing it, that's who he had in mind.
Well, I saw somewhere else, too, they even mentioned Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that's I was looking at that earlier today, trying to find, like, some backing for that, but the only thing I found, it was, like, in one place, it just said his price tag was too much, so it was just, like, immediately not on the list. But, just, it sounded like Kelly Lynch was pretty positive about the Mel Gibson thing because she kind of goes on, and we'll talk about it more, but describes some certain things from the script that were supposed to happen when it was with Mel or whatever.
Well, I don't know at what point Mel Gibson was. I don't know if he was ever attached to it at all. I think it was just maybe a wishful thinking, like, oh, that would be cool if we got Mel Gibson for this. Because Mel Gibson also would have been pretty expensive at the time, because this was like, around Lethal Weapon 3 and 4. This is like around that time. So he's pretty hot at this time. But by the time Leonard was brought on, Paramount did have a leading man attached, and it was Michael Douglas, star of Disclosure. This was going to be his follow-up to Disclosure, I guess, because this came out a year after Disclosure, right? That was 94. So he would have made two virtual reality movies in a row if that had been the case.
Well, side note, Leonard says that the weird fucking stuff in Disclosure happened. He was told that it happened because of Lawnmower Man's
I believe it,
success, that they added that in. And he was talking about how random and bad it is.
Well, not long after Leonard was attached, Michael Douglas was forced to leave the film due to a knee injury, which of course is not conducive to a movie that really requires a lot of running around.
Apparently this was very close. Like Brett Leonard says, he and Douglas got along great. They actually had meetings and they went into detail on everything. But then he says he talks to Michael Douglas one day, and Michael Douglas is like, look, I can't run around anymore. This is a movie where I got to run the whole time. Your movie is a big running movie. And so Michael Douglas' knee nopes right out of there, which, let's be real, it's probably for the best. I mean, because I like Michael Douglas fine enough, but him coming in and chasing around Russell Crowe in his Men's Warehouse suit and divorced dad energy is not the same as Denzel.
So he's like, you know what, I'm gonna go off and work with Rob Reiner and make The American President. It's a lot less running in that movie. So this left the film without a lead actor, and it was Sherry Lansing, the head of Paramount, who suggested that Leonard try to get Denzel Washington in the role. Now, at the time, Denzel's not really known for doing action movies. The closest he had come to at this point was probably 1991's Ricochet. Pretty cool little movie, but it's got action. It's action adjacent, I guess you'd call it. But he'd never done anything even remotely close to science fiction either. He has since then. He's Book of Eli and Deja Vu and stuff. But at the time, he had mostly done dramas and stuff, really, at this point. So his participation kind of seemed like a long shot. They were going to go for it. Leonard visited Denzel on the set of Tony Scott's Crimson Tide to try to woo the actor. So he's there on the set of Crimson Tide, and he had to not only sell Denzel on the film, but he had to explain to him just what the hell virtual reality was, because Denzel didn't know. He's like, what is this? And it all kind of went over Denzel's head. He's like, I don't understand, but my son, John David, is very into sci-fi. He thinks his son would love this concept. And in fact, John David had been trying to talk his dad into doing a sci-fi movie for a while. So the timing was kind of perfect. Like his son's trying to get him to do sci-fi. John David Washington's a big sci-fi guy, still is. And then this Virtuosity script comes along. So it kind of seemed like serendipity to Denzel almost. So he signed on, which, Denzel signing on adds some major star power to the film. This is like post Malcolm X. Obviously, Crimson Tide's going to come out and be huge. So that's a big deal to get Denzel.
This kind of reminds me of the story Martin Sheen tells about getting the role of Jason Wynn in Spawn. He's not a comic book guy. He doesn't know that sort of thing, but his kid was really into Spawn and was just like, you've got to do this movie. Yeah. And Martin Sheen was perfectly cast in that and does a great job.
Brett Leonard it's like when he talks about it in interviews, it's like they were on like a bridge, like a slanted bridge, and he's trying to like talk to Denzel about this movie and explain like the VR thing and stuff. But to hear him say it, he said that Denzel took it and then comes back to him and was like, I told my son about it and he read it, and then he said, Dad, you never do anything fun. He's like, all right, we're sold. We're going to do it. But I'm just picturing him on this like slanted bridge trying to explain virtual reality. But then John David Washington, tiny future Tenet King, is going to roll up in there and says, Dad, do the robot.
I love that. It's great, though. I love that. Have you guys seen the Criterion Closet video with it's John David Washington and his brother Malcolm, both in the closet together? No. There's this really great like viral clip that came from it where Malcolm, who's a director, he's like picking up this, I don't know, Jacques Tati box set and talking very eloquently about the cinema and all this. And then right behind him, John David grabs one and goes, Jackie Chan, and just like pulls out a Jackie Chan box set. It's like two very different types of film fans right there.
Yeah.
It's very, very funny.
If not for John David, maybe pin a medal on him, because I feel like this movie stood a real good chance of being a movie that ends up like stars Billy Baldwin and ends up in a $3
Right.
Walmart bin next to Wild Things 4
Yeah.
or something.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Denzel added a lot to it, a lot of gravitas to it, I would say. I mean, can you imagine it though with Michael Douglas as Barnes? I'm not saying it wouldn't work because Michael Douglas is good, and he was obviously making great movies at this time. You know, the '90s where he Basic Instinct and The Game, and he's making good
Right.
stuff.
he was hot. I mean, yeah, we talked about Michael Douglas in that series, and
Both in our Verhoeven series and our David Fincher series.
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. yeah.
I'm glad you said that because as I went through the notes and was like thinking about Michael Douglas, actually, I kind of could see that.
I mean, it would be a very different.
It would
movie.
be different.
It would.
Yeah.
It would. I think it could still work, but it would work for very different reasons because he's obviously going to bring a very, very different energy to the role than
totally.
Denzel was.
It's weird to me because Michael Douglas, to me, like he fits in like that '90s aesthetic with those slutty thrillers, but like playing the criminal guy, that's weird
I don't know.
to me.
Have you seen Falling Down?
Oh yeah, I
it's
guess
so
there's
good.
that.
He's so good at that. But at the time he was doing like Fatal Attraction and this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I always picture him in the business suit, and he's like, that guy. So it's a little weird. Like I could picture Mel ahead of Michael Douglas personally. Like I just feel like Mel looks like a lunatic.
Yeah. Well, Mel
that's
is
fair.
a lunatic.
To be fair, but he's very good at being a crazy guy that looks like he's been locked up.
Yeah,
for a
there's
little
a reason
while.
for that. All right, so they've got Denzel. That's great. They've got their leading man, but now they have to find someone to play the villain. Sid 6.7. Can you guys remember what Sid stands for?
I had that
Simulated.
written down earlier.
No.
Sadistic, intelligent, and dangerous.
Oh.
Stupid.
I was literally about to say it's stupid. Like, why would you make
why
that?
would you call it that?
Oh god.
Anyway, so they had to find someone to play Sid 6.7, someone who could hold his own against one of the greatest actors in the world. I mean, Denzel is one of the greatest actors in the world, still is.
Yeah. Mhm.
And they met with a few people, including Robert Downey Jr., who Leonard said was, quote, not in the best shape at that time. This is
Which is Hollywood code for rehab, jail, or actively fighting.
I think it was
God
all three
or
of those
something.
in the case of Robert Downey Jr.
Right.
It was that was not prime Robert Downey Jr. era in the mid 90s.
Yeah, I think in one interview, the person was like, "Hey, I heard you talking to Robert Downey Jr." And Leonard was like, "Yeah, it just didn't work out. He wasn't." They were like, "You said he wasn't in the best shape," and he was like,
I think you know what that means.
"He was like just a wild guy."
Just a wacky dude, just a wacky guy having a wacky time in the mid 90s doing a lot of fucking heroin or whatever he was doing. I don't know what even drugs he was doing.
Oh,
all
yeah, it
of
was
them.
heroin.
All of them.
Yeah.
Well, as luck would have it, Denzel's agent also represented a young Australian actor named Russell Crowe, who had just starred in this movie called Romper Stomper, which was produced in New Zealand, but it was imported into America, and it's really what brought him to the attention of American viewers for the first time. Now, it wasn't like a big hit. It was an independent foreign film, technically. So what didn't get like mainstream release, but it did get him attention, especially from casting agents and directors and things like that. Well, Leonard got his hands on a videotape of the movie, and when he watched it, he kind of knew right away that he had his Sid 6.7. In Romper Stomper, I saw it many, many years ago. It was one of those Netflix rentals that DVD rentals back in the day. But he plays a white supremacist gang leader, an absolutely abhorrent human being who beats and kills and rapes, and like he's a terrible person. But there was something about Crowe in this movie when Leonard watched it. Like no matter what kind of heinous acts his character committed, you just couldn't take your eyes off the guy. Crowe has this like unmistakable charisma it's like star power that is rare, that the type of like charisma and star power that he has, and that's exactly what Leonard wanted for Sid 6.7.
I remember seeing the movie, but like he's definitely that like Edward Norton look from like American History X or whatever. Like he's got the skinhead look and tattoos and stuff, but
he's got like a big like skeleton arm, I think, tattooed on his entire arm, if I remember right. But
yeah, that's right.
But so Leonard still had to convince Paramount to let him cast this unknown Australian guy as the co-lead in their big sci-fi movie opposite like a big star like Denzel. So Sherry Lansing at Paramount agreed to let Leonard film a screen test with Crowe, which Leonard did on his own dime. Like he had to fly Russell Crowe to LA from Australia, had to pay for it himself, had to pay for the screen test himself, and he did it. But in the end, it paid off. off, both Lansing and Denzel Washington were highly impressed with Crowe's screen test because they were both there for it, and they both signed off on him being cast as Virtuosity's villain.
I'm going to talk more about the Kelly Lynch thing in a little bit too, about like her explaining why this was happening. But like Denzel apparently wanted a screen test with everybody, and that's confirmed, I think, in the commentary I was listening to. And
yeah, he mentions
says that we'll get more into Sid later too, I'm sure. But just know that the script was like combine the traits of 183 serial killers, and Russell Crowe read it and said, "Okay, but I'm also going to add some Liberace and a fuckload of jazz hands." And, and Leonard's like, "You know what? Let it cook. Let's see what happens."
Well, I mean,
Russell Crowe does not seem like a fun person most of the time, but for some reason in this movie, I was just like, this guy.
He's having a blast.
Like,
yeah,
he is.
He is having a blast. I think Russell Crowe can seem like a fun guy, like the nice guys. I mean,
right?
He's got a sense of
yeah,
humor.
true.
I mean, there's the whole like I think he smacked somebody in the head with a telephone once in real life, which is not fun, not for that guy. But, I mean, but Russell Crowe, I mean, I don't know much about him as a person, but he is having a blast here, clearly. And we're going to talk a little bit more, I'm sure, about the film's legacy in a bit, but I think it's safe to say that it's kind of considered a footnote in the careers of both Washington and Crowe. It's like the answer to a trivia question, like, hey, before they were an American Gangster, Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe starred in what little-known mid-90s action movie? Like, that's kind of what this movie is to a lot of people.
Totally.
But when you watch the movie and you're watching Russell Crowe specifically, you know that you're watching a star. Like,
Yes.
I remember when I first watched this movie back in 1995, I had no idea who Russell Crowe was. Nobody did, really. But watching this movie, I specifically remember seeing him and thinking and like seeing something special in his performance, even as a teenager when I watched this. Like, this is a star-making role. Even critics who didn't like the movie could not deny how good he was in the role.
I was just about to say it's undeniable, really.
You can't. I mean, of course, some folks had seen him earlier in 1995. He was in Sam Raimi's The Quick and the Dead, and he's good in that. This, to me, is the movie where he really shows off as an actor. Like, he shows off his charisma and his like ferocity as an actor. I mean, he's clearly having a ton of fun. He's turning in one of those like those villain performances that you can't help but love.
Yes.
No, it's 100%. I mean, the ones that like you get from people who play the Joker,
Yes.
like Jack Nicholson or
Yeah.
Heath Ledger. It's like,
Yeah.
this is a person who's just letting it all go right now. Just
You
to do
love that
something.
kind of villain. Those like villains that are so fun to watch. Those are good examples, like the Joker. Heath Ledger is the Joker, or like Jason Momoa in the last Fast and Furious movie, who's basically playing the Joker. Gary Oldman in The Professional, Kurtwood Smith in RoboCop. Like, it's that kind of villain. Like the villain.
Hannibal Lecter.
Well,
Anthony Hopkins is Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It's a subdued energy, but you are locked into every
yeah,
word coming out of his mouth.
But the ones like Kurtwood Smith, Clarence Boddicker in RoboCop, where the character, there's a glee to what they're doing. Like they like being bad, and they're
true.
reveling in
Yeah.
it. I always think of Billy Zane in Demon Knight as that kind of character, like
Oh yeah,
he's
that's
just
true,
just so fun to watch. He's despicable, but he's so fun to watch. And that's what Sid 6.7 is to me. Like, he's so fun to watch. In fact, he's so dynamic in the film that when the marketing people at Paramount saw the final cut, one of them told Leonard, they said, well, great, now we have a fucking Russell Crowe movie. What they meant by that was now they had to sell a movie that stars this guy who is really outshining Denzel in the movie that nobody's ever heard of. So we've got to sell this guy that nobody's ever heard of. Of course, 2 years after this, Crowe stars in L.A. Confidential, which I think is probably the movie that secured him as a movie star. That movie was huge for him. That movie was huge for everyone who's in it, really. And then it was kind of off to the races. Like, he did The Insider, Gladiator, Beautiful Mind, Master and Commander. Those all came out like boom, 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 right after L.A. Confidential. But if you're asking me, I think his turn in Virtuosity is probably where he started getting the attention of a lot of casting directors, because you can't watch him in this movie, regardless of what you think of the movie. And I'm sure we'll have some reviews later who are not kind to the movie, but I think it's hard to deny how fun he is to watch in this. Like, he's having a ball, and it makes him scary, because any villain who's having that much fun being that bad is pretty scary, because there's no regrets, because he doesn't have regrets programmed into him, which is what's really scary about him.
No, that's always the best. That's like with the Joker or with this guy or whatever. It's just always this, you're taking a real gamble if you're counting on him not to shoot you in the face.
He doesn't care.
He doesn't care.
He has no
way.
empathy at all. Like, the Joker doesn't have empathy because he's the Joker. Sid doesn't have empathy because it was literally not in his programming. So rounding out the lead roles in the film, we've got Kelly Lynch, from Roadhouse. I don't know if you,
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
among other
Hell
things,
yeah.
Drugstore Cowboy. She's in other things, but I mean, come on, it's Kelly Lynch from Roadhouse for us.
Yeah.
Right. And she plays another doctor, not a medical doctor in this one. She's more of like, I don't think she's a medical doctor this time around, but she's Dr. Madison Carter. She's a criminal psychologist who teams with Denzel's character to help him catch Sid. And then the rest of the cast, it's kind of a who's who of character actors. You've got noted stage actor Steven Spinella as Dr. Daryl Lindemeyer, the scientist who created and for some reason released Sid 6.7. I've never, as many times as I've seen this movie, I do not understand his reasoning for letting Sid go, other than to just be a petty bitch, I guess.
Yeah.
I literally had the note like Steven Spinella is the scientist who creates Sid, and just
literally out of pettiness. He's like, well,
yeah, I don't know. I got Jeffrey Dahmer.exe. Let's see what happens.
He's still got Sheila, which we know that Sid stands for sadistic, intelligent, dangerous. What does Sheila stand for?
Sexy, hot.
Well, that's all we got. We got
Yep.
There we go. And that's everybody in that acronym.
Sorry.
Todd, writer, comedian, as we've noted before,
Yep.
not an improv artist.
Not an improver. Nope.
All right. So we've also got Louise Fletcher, Nurse Ratched herself, as the police commissioner. The great William Fichtner, one of like the all-time great character actors, in my opinion. He plays her sidekick Wallace.
no.
He's really slimy, and he's really slimy in everything. That's just his thing. He's a slimy guy.
Stoic, sharp cheekbones, looks like he's been disappointed with everything since 1983. Like he's supposedly, according to him, like 80% of his scenes never made the final cut of this.
Oh, really?
movie,
Well, he's in it a good bit,
too
but
bad.
I mean, he's a pretty funny character in it, which he doesn't get to do very often. We've also got William Forsythe as the police chief, Billy Cochran. Love William Forsythe. That guy is just fun to watch. And Kevin J. O'Connor as Clyde, who is the scientist who creates the silicon prototype that allows Sid to come into the real world. Basically, Sid is allowed to exist because Clyde is horny and wants to fuck Sheila in real life. That's it.
And he's the perfect guy to do that too, because Kevin J. O'Connor always looks like in every character like he just got done hiding a body behind a gas
he's just got that
station or
look.
something.
He's got those shifty eyes. Kevin J. O'Connor, if you don't know the name, like you've seen him. He's like one of those, hey, it's that guys who pops up in everything, often in roles like this. Like he's in a lot of movies similar to this. He's in Lord of Illusions. Like he's in all kinds of stuff around this time. I'd say his most well-known role to most people, and he's almost unrecognizable in it, but he plays Benny in The Mummy alongside Brendan Fraser.
Yeah.
You know, Benny, he's got a questionable accent. I guess he's technically playing brownface in that movie. But he's playing an Egyptian guy. So he's got a tan face. But yeah, and a funny accent. But he's very funny in it. Like Benny is a very funny character. So if you've seen The Mummy, then you know who Kevin J. O'Connor is. He looks very different than he does here. We've also got 9-year-old Kaylee Cuoco in this movie. From The Big Bang Theory, and I think is her first movie role, maybe her first role ever. But I think
I did see it as her first.
Yeah, first movie role. So she plays Dr. Carter's daughter, and then in a couple of very small, almost cameo roles. Tracy Lords. Tracy Lords is the singer in the Media Zone Club, which is weird because she had already done movies at this point. Like Crybaby had already come out at this point. She's done movies where she had actual roles, but I don't know, for some reason she's just in a very small role as that singer here.
She's randomly there, like somebody dared Leonard to squeeze a porn star in it, and he's like,
Done.
Bet, I got it.
And then Michael Buffer is in there playing himself.
Of course he is. For the record, I mean, I guess this is where I would mention wrestling. Like Michael Buffer would do the intros for main events on WCW Monday Night Nitro. But
he's the Let's Get Ready to Rumble guy.
Yeah, and makes 25 to 100K every time he says it.
Good for him.
He is racked up over $400 million just doing Let's Get Ready to Rumble. And he trademarked that
That's
phrase,
amazing.
so.
That's incredible.
Wow.
Good for, you know what? Good for him. That's
props to you, Michael Buffer. Wow. Oh, and another side note, just because I feel like Todd recently brought up this weird ass Fraggle Rock movie idea about the movie The Rock. William Forsythe in this movie will go on to play almost exactly that exact same character in that
The Rock,
movie.
yeah.
Like he is in The Rock. Yeah. He is the same dude, like same suit, like same
That's kind of
attitude,
who he always
everything.
plays. Really, that's like what you bring
Yeah.
him in for. He's the police or the sheriff who's kind of an asshole, and that's just what he's good at.
Yeah.
He's got the voice for
I
it,
love him in The Devil's Rejects.
where he plays a sheriff, I believe, who's kind of an
Yeah,
asshole.
he does play the sheriff. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So another side note is I thought this was interesting in that AV Club interview I mentioned with Kelly Lynch before. I'm just going to go into it a little bit because I feel like it's just part of the story that's worth talking about. She said, I said she had signed on it. It was like Mel Gibson was in the role, her role of Madison Carter. There was sort of a more romantic situation going on there. And the casting of Denzel kind of changed everything. Mel's character, or the character as originally written, I'll just say it that way, was in prison for many years. He gets out and he hooks up with this computer forensic specialist who finds bad guys on the internet. They pursue this guy who's a virtual reality creation.
She wasn't a criminal psychologist at the time. She was a computer expert of some sort.
Yeah, forensic specialist or something like that. And there was a bigger role and they fall for each other. And there was more depth to her character, I guess, is the way she puts it. And she says, and Denzel decided, well, we all need to audition with him. And she says in that interview, which is rarely done anymore, she says usually they just put the two biggest actors available for a part in a movie.
Who cares if they have any charisma?
They have any chemistry. Yeah, she says if you find out one day that they don't, then it's like, whoops. But she said for Denzel and her, it was very charged. It was really great. They felt connected. It was sexual, funny. They connected intellectually.
Honestly, let's be honest. You put Denzel Washington and Kelly Lynch in a room together, how's it not going to be sexy?
And she said she was thrilled about taking the movie, that it was a great script. And then she says, but then we showed up for rehearsal. Now, she does say in the interview that a lot of it sits with the director, Brett Leonard, because she says in this case, he seemed a little inexperienced, as he'd only done a few things, and that when you're in a movie like this and you've got these bigger name actors, they're going to start to feel like they got to come in and take over. And you got to be able to stand up to that. She puts it as, quote, no one is minding the store. She said she felt like that was kind of the feeling that Denzel had. So he took the script and started rewriting it.
Denzel.
And Denzel. She says, her quote from the interview is that he took the script and rewrote it and decided that my character wasn't really so much of an expert, but worked at a company and had a child, have a bomb strapped to her back. So I would become sort of a hostage, a child in jeopardy thing, which I absolutely hate. And there would not be a romantic relationship between these people. Even though this man had been in prison for many, many years, he didn't feel any connection to women when he got out, or at least not any woman that we see him with. And then he took half of my part and incorporated that into his dialogue. And that was kind of the beginning of the end. I mean, the whole script just unraveled. She actually describes the initial script she read as very good, as she thought it was moving and interesting. So she says she tried to ask him in a nice way, why do you feel like there's no way your character would be interested in mine? It's not as though it's cheesy or it's badly written. And so she goes on to say, and he told her, quote, you know what, Kelly, I hate to say it, but white men bring women to movies and they don't want to watch a black man with their woman. I was like, what? No. He said, I'm sorry, but that's what it is. That's what the audience is. And she says, I'm like, but how about The Bodyguard? That just came out and that was a huge hit movie. And he says, well, that's different. That's a white man. And she says, so this is your main motivating factor for all of this? And he said, yes. So she says, the love story wasn't a love story anymore. So I said, okay. She says, years later, there was a episode of the Larry Elder Show, and they were talking about the movie, and a crew member called in and told the story about this. He didn't identify himself, but he knew all of these details, and he was telling, and they were like, we need to get Kelly Lynch on the phone. And she was like, I was in my car listening to it, but I just didn't feel ready to talk about it yet. But they had it absolutely right. She said, it's always just kind of made me sad, not only as an actress, because it totally turned the movie into a piece of crap, but I get that Denzel got a little bit afraid of everything. And I'm sure he believed what he was saying, although I think he's wrong. I think people go to movies because they're good movies and they don't go to them because they think they're bad. I don't come from that place. And if that's what people think, then I'm not making movies for them anyway. It was a weird experience, but I learned a lot from it.
Yeah.
And that's how she describes it.
Yeah, I mean, she's basically saying that Denzel didn't want an interracial romance because he thought it would hurt the film's box office, which I don't necessarily agree with. I don't think the movie needs a romantic subplot necessarily. I don't think
Right.
it's necessary for what the movie's trying to do. I think the dynamic between the characters kind of works as it is. I don't think it needs the romantic aspect of it. The one thing that I did find that it's a little in contrast to what she's saying there, though. And who knows what's right, but that interview was conducted in 2012. The movie came out in 95, so it's, over a decade after the movie. So who knows how reliable her memory on certain parts of it are. But on the new Vinegar Syndrome 4K of this movie that came out, there's an interview with Eric Berndt, the screenwriter. And Kelly Lynch talks how, like, her character didn't originally have a daughter, and that the daughter was created as sort of like, someone to strap a bomb onto for motivation at the end. But in that interview with Eric Berndt, he mentions the daughter character as if she were part of the movie's concept almost from the beginning. So there's some sort of, one of them is incorrect or wrong. And I sort of I feel like I want to side with the guy who wrote it.
The guy who wrote it.
I want to feel like he remembers what he wrote and not what was rewritten by Denzel Washington.
Just playing devil's advocate for her, if I can just, I don't know that she necessarily says in the interview that didn't exist in it, but she said her literal quote was more like, my character wasn't an expert anymore. It was just somebody who worked at a company and had a kid. And so maybe it just became more about that, or she was just not a factor in it. And it could be that she was just disappointed with having stuff cut. So who knows?
Because it makes sense, even thematically, to have the daughter like be bait basically at the end, because
the whole finale is based around
well, and it's sort of mirrors what happened to Barnes earlier, in the flashbacks, because he lost his wife and daughter to one of the personalities that's inside of Sid. So it's kind of like almost his redemption of being able to save this daughter, even though he wasn't able to save his own. So it makes total sense, and it's weird to think that would not have been there from the very beginning. So, but who knows? That's always the case with these when we're researching these, is like memories are weird. Different people remember things different ways, and you just kind of have to dig in there and figure out what the real story is. And sometimes we can't, and sometimes it's like we just got to give every side of it.
And if anything, like with that part of it, with Denzel's opinion, obviously I'm not a black man, so, and especially a famous black Hollywood actor, so I don't know. But it sucks if that's really how he feels, that like it just that would have ruined them, or would have ruined the box office of the movie for that to have happened.
I'm pretty sure he does the Pelican brief right after this with Julia Roberts. So it's like immediately after this, I think.
So never mind.
I don't remember if there's a romantic thing between them in that, but I feel like there is.
I refuse to believe that it was just that he wasn't into Kelly Lynch.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
All of that said, I've never seen Drugstore Cowboy, but I've got to see it because apparently, when I was looking at her earlier, that's the movie that people thought of for this. That apparently people were big fans of her from that. Leonard even mentions that, but then. Also, I saw where like Joel Silver and stuff had seen Drugstore Cowboy, and that's why he was like, I want you in Roadhouse. And she even said in that one she had signed a 2-picture deal, and he's like, I'm putting you in Roadhouse. And he's like, now you can say no, but you've signed a 2-picture deal, and I will make your life very difficult if you don't just do it.
What was the second one?
No. Oh, it was like Drugstore Cowboy, and then I think the same production company maybe did both or whatever.
Very different movies.
Yeah, it was like the same studio or something. So he's like, you got to do one more. I say it's Roadhouse.
And we're all happier people for it. Well, principal photography for Virtuosity began in January of 1994, and most of the filming took place in and around Los Angeles. Like, Leonard very specifically wanted this to be an LA movie, one that was not only shot in LA, but that really like featured LA. Like, he wanted to feature LA landmarks and like recognizable LA locations. And you can see that throughout the film, but they're on the streets of LA. He's not disguising it, not trying to pretend that LA is another city. Like it is LA. In fact, there's a documentary that he mentions in the commentary for this called LA Plays Itself, which is about LA being in movies where LA is standing in for LA. And he's apparently featured pretty prominently in that because of Virtuosity, because it uses LA so much in it.
Wow.
One of the most spectacular locations, though, that he used in the film was the Hughes aircraft hangar So in the film, the Hughes aircraft hangar is used for the building where the virtual reality rigs are housed. It's like the big warehouse where they're hanging, and where they're hanging in the actual rig, and the big screen for Sid is in there and everything.
Yeah.
So this building, which with 52-foot high ceilings is one of the largest warehouse structures in the world, was originally built by Howard Hughes and was the location where the Spruce Goose, which is one of the biggest airplanes ever built, was constructed.
Only Virtuosity would say, you know where we should birth a digital serial killer? The place where Howard Hughes built a wooden plane and probably screamed at ghosts, I guess.
I think the ghost screaming was back in his bedroom, after he didn't leave his house for 10 years. But
yeah, he describes I don't know if it's the guy we're going to talk about art design, but Leonard talks about in the commentary, and God, I wish I'd written down the name, but they went for a very industrial design at the beginning, like in that hangar, and like for the depth that it provided, and like all you could see going on, and that all the pieces of the set were actually interactive, and and he talks about how much Denzel hated those fucking like mounts that they put them in. When they're
like being constrained in it.
Yeah. Which, by the way, it did look like this is not plausible to me. Like your lower half is just hanging
just
off.
Dangling. Yeah. Just dangling.
Seems like
there.
This is not safe. Why would you do that? But yeah, it's such a cool set, and just like a huge venue.
Yeah.
Just a neat what's the word I'm looking for? Like a counter to the like special effects and the CG and all that stuff.
Well, and it doesn't read like an airplane hangar when you see it in the movie, but it does, because it's such a big space. Like every time somebody's walking, like you just see the depth of the space in the background. Like it adds a huge like epic feeling to the space. And it's a very cool set. I mean, and as are a lot of the sets in this movie. I think the set design of this is fantastic. And what Leonard's vision was to basically depict a world set, what he called 5 minutes in the future, one that was clearly more advanced than the world we live in, but not so much to be unrecognizable. He didn't want it to be like Star Trek or something where it's like hundreds of years in the future. This is set in 1999. This is set 4 years after the movie came out, so it's not supposed to be like way in the future. And helping him bring this world to life was production designer Nilo Rodas Jamero, who you may remember was also the production designer on Johnny Mnemonic.
The one where Keanu Reeves has 80 gigs of illegal data in his brain and a cyber dolphin saves the day. Do you remember that one?
I remember it. I remember it well. I remember it fondly. In fact,
I mean, it's a little bit different. Like I don't know, when I see his name now, I'm gonna think like we will see robot glass floors and neon walls and chrome toilets that scream when you flush them.
The thing is, like Nilo Rodas Jamero didn't do a lot of work as production designer. I think we talked about that a little bit during Johnny Mnemonic. They were primarily like an art director and a visual effects art director before this on Star Trek and things like that we mentioned. But as a production designer, they've only got like 4, I think, credits. And this and Johnny Mnemonic are 2 of those in the same year. They came out 6 months apart from each other. So they were just kind of like the cyber go-to that year. But it wasn't their main like career. But I think they do a fantastic job here, because I think the sets are awesome. I think that this set that we're talking about here in the Hughes hangar is particularly impressive, but I love the media zone. I think the media zone is rad. Like that club. I don't know why clubs in futuristic movies are always in these like industrial spaces, but it looks cool. So who cares?
Yeah.
That's a lot of the, I think the mindset behind this movie is it looks cool. Who cares?
Yeah.
I think that's literally the idea. It's weird because a lot of these like real world spaces do seem that way, and then but not like the shopping mall or something or wherever.
Well, that's the thing. It's in the future, but it's not like so far in the future. So there are some parts of it that are still going to look like of just a regular market, because I think they shot that scene just at a regular market in Los Angeles. It's like Earl's Electronics or something is what the sign says in the background, which is probably just an actual place in this whatever market they were in LA. It's apparently a very well-known one. But Leonard's director of photography on the film that I want to mention was Gail Tattersall, who had also been the DP on his previous film, Hideaway, and also worked on another 1995 science fiction classic that we've already brought up once during this series, and that is, of course, Tank Girl.
And since we're mentioning it again, I will say again, it is criminal that Tank Girl has not been remade at this point or rebooted
I think,
or something.
first of all, I love the original Tank Girl, and this is probably a discussion for a Tank Girl episode, which I think if we bring it up a third time in this series, if it comes up organically, we're just going to have to do it. That's the rule.
Yeah.
But I would rather, and I love Tank Girl.
Yeah.
The movie.
Yeah.
But I would rather them do an animated TV show or
Perfect.
animated movie.
That feels like the right move.
Using the like original art, because that guy, what's his name, Jamie Hewlett, he's still doing shit for the gorillas and stuff like that, so he's still working. I think if you had Jamie Hewlett like leading the charge on an animated Tank Girl TV show,
yeah,
because there's animated sequences in the movie that look fantastic, and I want to see that I want to see that all brought to life. I would say that.
Yeah. I think that if they did it, and even, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon,
give it to us
so that they can really, just do what they want.
Mm-hmm.
God, we're long overdue for something like that. I think
Yes.
that would be great.
Somebody make it happen.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to care about this, but I'm just going to mention it that, the thing with Gail Tattersall is that he doesn't look like what you'd think he would look like.
Yeah.
But he doesn't just light scenes. It's like he huffs and hallucinates color and then he films it or something. Like, I don't know. Like, I love the way that he shoots things. And he's even in, and I think this is probably why I like them, and nobody's going to care and everybody's going to hate me for saying this, but like even those early 2000 like ghost movies, like 13 Ghosts and like Ghost Ship, this is the guy who was the DP on those kind of movies.
But those movies, like, I think 13 Ghosts and Ghost Ship were the same director, but they look good. Like,
they look great.
Regardless of what you think of the movies, and like I don't like either of those movies as a whole. There are moments of them that I like the first beginning of Ghost Ship is great. The 13 Ghosts has that thing with the horse. Isn't there a thing with a horse? That's really wild. Is that am I thinking of the right movie? Yeah.
Yeah.
But the movies look good though, like visually.
13 Ghosts also has Matthew Lillard, which is going to come up again for us, whether you like it or not. So suck it. We're going to have to deal with Matthew Lillard.
Hey, I like Matthew Lillard. He seems like a nice guy.
There's
hell of a D&D player.
Yeah, that's what I hear. He's got his own like gaming company, doesn't he?
He does. Beetle and Grimm's.
So anyway, back to Virtuosity. We got off base, but Virtuosity's score, because I want to highlight a few of these behind the scenes folks. The score was composed by Christopher Young, who is, kind of a major figure in genre film. Now, longtime listeners of Cinema Shock may recognize that name. His most famous score is probably for Hellraiser, a movie that we haven't covered here yet, although Gary has been trying to convince me to do a Clive Barker series, so
it's coming.
It'll be one day we will be doing a Clive Barker series, so we'll be talking about Hellraiser. But Young also provided the scores for Tobe Hooper's Invaders from Mars, which we covered during our Tobe Hooper The Canon Years series, as well as several of Sam Raimi's later films, including Spider-Man 3 and Drag Me to Hell. So yeah, his name's come up here a few times in the past. And I think his score here is really good. I was listening to it while I was writing notes yesterday. Like I think it's a really fun score. It's a lot of orchestration mixed with some like synthesizer and like more futuristic sounds, but not overly done. It's not like all synthesizer. It's I think he works it in really well. But he also had to work his score around several needle drops because it's a mid 90s movie. We got to throw some live in there. We got to throw a live track in there.
Yeah.
And one of those needle drops was a theme song for the movie that Peter Gabriel had written specifically for this. Because remember Peter Gabriel? He had done that music video. Brett Leonard had done that music video for him back right before this. Also found out that this song, this blew my mind, was co-written by Tori Amos. That's wild. But it's a song called Party Man.
Yeah, I was gonna say they literally approached this guy as like, you're gonna score this, and you got to do it around Peter Gabriel and Tori Amos, and a little club banger we got going on called Party Man.
Yeah.
And yes,
Oh,
it's playing during a shootout, so
yep.
you'll need to work with it.
So so he had to seamlessly integrate the song into his score and loop in parts of it throughout the film in a couple scenes. It's a really I can't recall that having been done that way before, but it's really weird.
Yeah, I mean, but the score is really good. It's not. It's like I don't know. It slaps. I think you
Yeah.
said that on like some of the tracks, but it's good. I think it's exactly right. I almost feel like this guy could have scored The Matrix or something too.
Yeah.
Like he would have been really good for it. Also worth mentioning, by the way, that at one point Russell Crowe gets out of the car and the song's playing on the radio. I think it's there, but it's on the soundtrack. You can check it out. The Photograph Kills by a band called 30 Odd Foot of Grunts. That is
Oh, is that Russell Crowe's man?
That's Russell Crowe's band. They recorded their music video on set for this movie, so you can
Nice.
find the music video.
Oh my
when
God, really?
Yeah. It's so you can just see it's including clips of Virtuosity, but just
Oh,
also
of course.
Russell Crowe just in the suit, like
Is he wearing
singing.
the purple suit or the whatever?
Yeah, the purple suit, like just singing. And
Nice. I love that. Well,
Yeah.
I using that Peter Gabriel song is such a bizarre choice for this film to make, I think, because it's not when you listen to the song independently, it does not seem like a song that should be in this movie. And when it comes in over because they use it in full on the end credits, it's like this helicopter shot around Denzel on top of the building at the end, and then it's playing like the score, and then the score sort of fades out, and this song called Party Man, which, despite the name, does not sound like a partying song at all. It comes in, and you're like, what the fuck just happened? Why is this playing over the end credits? This does not. And how is this a theme song to this movie? Like, what is it? What about this song has anything to do with this movie? It's really weird. But I guess if you're Brett Leonard and you know Peter Gabriel, you use that connection.
You just do it. Yeah.
You just do it. It's the song. The song's not bad. It just doesn't feel like it belongs in a sci-fi movie about virtual reality. But I do think that Christopher Young's score is really good, and I think he does incorporate Gabriel's song into the film really well. I love the that kapow scene in the UFC arena. It's so weird with the audience, like all.
I was gonna say that no audience chants that ever.
Yeah, no, yeah, but it's so stupid. But I don't know. I like how stylized it kind of is.
Yeah, it's
I
acceptable
also
here. Weirdly, that like the UFC has like tag team UFC or something, or there's
Yeah,
like
in
5
the
fights
future.
happening in the octagon.
Which this is kind of like one of the first times that the UFC had ever been featured in a movie, I think.
Oh, I think it said 10. I think it was like UFC 10 or whatever.
That's
was on
crazy.
there. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was Ken Shamrock was there.
Yeah,
So,
Ken Shamrock is in the scene. Yeah. And there's another Christopher Young track that I also love, which is the one from the Media Zone scene, the symphony of whatever that he calls it, where Sid is composing, using the screams and stuff. The music for that, if you listen to it independently, like on the soundtrack, it's pretty fucking fantastic. Like, it is really cool. And Christopher Young I feel like he must have been having a lot of fun doing that, because it's sort of outside of the realm of what you would normally do in a movie, because it's being used specifically in the scene and just using weird sounds that you wouldn't normally expect. But it's fun. I think it's a great score, actually.
it's a weird thing with scores that like because I mentioned The Matrix earlier, and I feel like it even suffers from this a little bit, where you have to be careful. Like, I feel like a soundtrack can really date the movie, and so like 80s movies, a lot of times the soundtrack's there. They just because of the soundtrack, even it's gonna feel like an 80s movie. And I used to think that was always like why you'd only get to use like classical music or like an actual orchestration or something. But I do feel like you can get away with it with synth now, because synth has like come back around, probably thanks to movies like Drive or whatever. But it's like synth is acceptable too. So you can, which makes John Carpenter still, relevant. And, And
But it can sometimes date a movie. Like anything with like a Tangerine Dream score always feels really dated to me. Like I like it. I love it, actually. I love the Tangerine Dream stuff from like the 80s. But it very much dates a movie when you hear it. So it has you have to kind of like walk that line of not wanting it to feel like specifically of its time.
Yeah,
which,
there was
which
something
like,
about this soundtrack that I felt like he was doing a good job. Like,
Yeah,
I
I
felt
agree.
like it worked.
Yeah,
And,
I agree.
and
It's
you could accept it.
it's balanced in that way. Another thing, though, if you're talking about virtuosity, you've got to talk about the computer generated graphics, the CGI in this, because
For sure.
obviously that's going to be a big part of this movie.
Yeah.
And Leonard took a pretty unique approach for the film's digital effects. Instead of hiring someone like, say, ILM to create a quote unquote realistic CGI, he enlisted some of the leading cyberpunk artists of the time and had them create the film's digital effects using consumer grade hardware like Pentium PCs. So they're not using like super fancy stuff. They're using the kind of shit you could just go down to like Best Buy and get, right?
Mm.
And the film's almost psychedelic, or as Leonard calls it, cyberdelic, which is a term that I really like for some reason. The visuals are almost intentionally phony looking, like 2001: A Space Odyssey Star Child sequence run through a Windows 95 screensaver.
Cyberdelic, it sounds like a street drug you buy from a raver who lives like in an abandoned mall or something.
Right.
Yeah.
It's but yeah. So they like run into like, all right, what do you need to make these effects? And he's like, we could get ILM, and he's like, nah, just give me some stoned animators and a gateway computer.
Yep.
And, maybe some Red Bull. We'll figure it out.
Yep.
But here's the thing. It works, and it's bold and stupid and brilliant and cheap.
Yeah.
It's chaotic. I don't know, but it feels
Yeah.
like it fits this movie. Like
I
it feels
agree.
like
And yeah, I absolutely agree. And that was actually going to be my next question for you guys is what do you think of the movie's use of CGI? Because it is a very unique approach to using CGI.
I think using it to where it looks cheap, it looks phony, but Sid looks and Sheila looks, it's them, it's the video footage of them. I think that's used to showcase the immediacy, the danger of when they get into the real world
Mm-hmm.
of like, oh, they look just like a normal person. Like here they are. And yeah, the computer stuff seems so fake now. Well, yeah, that's intentional because
But it seemed fake then. I mean, it was never intended to look realistic. And
yeah, that's the whole point. Yeah.
yeah, and I love it. I love the look of the CGI in this. I love that it is a little bit dated because the style seems very, like I said, intentionally, much like the Lawnmower Man. Like the CGI in that. I think it obviously, same director, but I don't think it was the same effects house or anything. But I do think it establishes it in a specific time and place, but it really makes it feel kind of unlike anything else released around this time.
Yeah.
There's something about it that's really cool to me. Like I like that glitchy, the very end, like when he's falling through and you've got just those like that giant CGI head of Russell Crowe's character, and it's very like when he says like this, you're in my world now, and all the buildings warp, and then Denzel goes tumbling through this like cyber psychedelic tunnel almost. Like it's really wild looking. It's really cool, I think. And I know that I'm sure some of the reviews that we'll find out there will probably not like that stuff, but I think it sets this movie apart from a lot of other stuff in the genre, honestly.
I think there's so much else going on in this movie that it's okay. Like it
fits the world of the movie.
Yeah. It just fits. I mean, if anything, if I had any problem with the CG in the movie, it would be like in the real world with Russell Crowe, like some of the like him regrowing his limbs and stuff. Like I wish they had tried to go a little more practical with like some of that.
Yeah.
Like when he's in the regular world, and felt like they hit the CG a little too much there, maybe.
When he's regenerating, I mean, there's no other way to do that, I guess. But there are prosthetics involved as well. Like when his hand's missing, and obviously when he falls through all the glass at the end, that's all.
I was gonna say I was bummed at the end when he falls through the glass because I was expecting, if you weren't gonna go all out, which I thought they were gonna do, where he becomes some kind of fucking huge monster thing because he's like covered in glass. So I was like, oh,
I don't think he can regenerate more than what he's is already there though. I don't think he can create new appendages and stuff.
Oh yeah. That's probably true.
That would be a cool twist though if he could.
But I was like, if you're not going to do it, then you could went a little more practical with like his limbs reaching out and stuff,
Yeah.
like maybe.
But it doesn't bother me. I mean, it's just mid 90s.
Well, I'm just saying if I'm
Yeah,
being nitpicky, like
Sure.
it's that's a thing. But
Yeah.
no, I thought most of it worked for the movie.
Yeah. I agree. So despite the star power of Denzel Washington in this movie, when Virtuosity was released in early August of 1995, it didn't really make much of an impact. The movie raked in just $24 million in North America and a total of only $37 million worldwide. And on a budget of $30 million, that's not great.
Yeah, you got to let that sink in. Movie where Russell Crowe digitizes himself and explodes people with his flesh suit, got bodied by goddamn Babe the talking pig. Like he, you mentioned this earlier, but I was looking at a thing where like Leonard. Actually, I have the quote right here. He says, we've got a famous marketing meeting where we screened the film. The screening went very well, but the head of marketing stood up and said, well, great, we got a fucking Russell Crowe film.
Yep.
And he was unknown. They didn't know how to market it, and he was too strong in the movie.
Yeah.
So like the marketing team was bummed, but
yeah, I mean, but he is right there on the poster. I mean, Denzel's big like face is on the poster, but then Russell Crowe's right there in front of him, but nobody knew who that guy was. But honestly, like I don't remember, obviously, because I saw the movie regardless, but I didn't care who was in it. I barely knew who Denzel Washington was at the time. I had not seen Malcolm X when I was 13 years old.
No, I hadn't either. And watching the movie now, it's amazing to me that I had not seen it before.
Yeah.
Because it's everything I would have loved
back then. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I would have been super into this whole concept. Like everything about it, just from how sci-fi it is to he's supposed to be like 100 and something serial killers all wrapped up in one.
Because it's a serial killer movie, it's a sci-fi movie, it's a cop movie. It's like it's got a lot going on there. It's an action movie, but it didn't matter really at the time when it came out. Like I said, it did pretty poorly. Critical reception was say mixed to negative. It really leans a little more mixed than full on negative. But one of those mixed reviews, and his actually leans a little more positive, but it's from our old pal Roger Ebert. And his review for the Chicago Sun-Times, he said that Virtuosity was filled with bright ideas and fresh thinking, but the underlying story is as old as the hills. What redeems Virtuosity a little is that even at the end, even in the midst of the action cliches, it still surprises in the paradox of a villain that is also a program.
Ebert was like, the story's old as hell, but the murder program slaps.
Yeah, that's cool.
Which is fair. Sid 6.7 is basically Satan in his rave outfit. He's a personality built from old Tumblr blogs. Like he's
it was still Blogspot or something at this time. I think. Live journal. In his review for the Los Angeles Times, Kevin Thomas called Virtuosity a sleek, brutal techno thriller that generates nonstop action. For all its daunting technology and intricate visuals, the film is basically a simple struggle between good and evil and a familiar cautionary tale about the dangers of the misuse of technology. So that's not bad. That's pretty good.
No, that's I mean, and that's how I describe Facebook generally, or like deep fakes, or like how my Chat GPT girlfriend makes me horny in like 12 seconds from logging in. Like, wow. I mean, yeah,
learning too much.
Yeah, it's great. It's dangerous. Peter Travers from Rolling Stone, he called it stillborn.
Yeah. Well, here's a quote that I pulled from his review. Though Virtuosity connects all the dots to give audiences a roller coaster ride, the movie begets nothing new. It's stillborn. That's not great.
Jesus, Pete. You could have just said it's not for me and moved on.
What a fucked up way to say that. Jesus.
I swear, like, the more I like look and see his reviews, the more I'm like, man, you act like a movie fucking stole your lunch money and fucked your mother.
Yeah.
Like, he says some nasty shit.
Yeah.
It's him and Rex Reed. We're gonna have a Peter Travers shirt.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, with all of that in mind, I know we've already talked a little bit about our thoughts on this. At least me and Gary have. I've quite figured out Todd's thoughts on it. I want to know what you think. First, both of y'all saw this for the first time. Neither of y'all saw this back in the day. That's which is also wild to me. I know, Gary, you said you couldn't believe you had never seen it before, but because I feel like this movie, I mean, it was like, I mean, it didn't make a ton of money, but I don't know. Maybe it's just my memories of it because I was so into it back in the day that I thought that everyone else was.
No, it's one of those weird movies that I feel like you know that it exists.
You knew of it. It wasn't like you had never heard of it before.
Yeah,
you knew
you just never saw it. It's one of those movies that's like, I don't know, man. I'm the dude who didn't see Titanic until we did the series on James Cameron.
But that was purposeful. You were purposely like avoiding Titanic. Like consciously avoiding it. Like you made it a point to not see Titanic until we did that.
I wasn't doing that with this one, but I just never did see it. But people would say, like, if for some reason if Virtuosity came up, I would have kind of known what you're talking about.
Right.
Like, I remember that was a movie that happened.
Right. Well, I mean, for me, this is like it does feel like one of those movies that are such a big part of your like childhood or adolescence that is like so big and important to you that you assume that everyone else felt the same way about it. And I saw this movie in theaters with my dad, and I watched it a bunch of times on VHS and stuff. And I assumed that it was like a huge blockbuster because, you know, I was 13 and I wasn't keeping up with box office. So I just assumed it was as big a deal to everyone as it was to me, because for my 13-year-old brain, this was like absolute cinema. Like, this was the pinnacle of cinema. This is everything I loved in the movies, because like I was a big fan of action movies and sci-fi. I had not quite gotten into horror yet at this point, but like Terminator 2 was like a touchstone for me. Yeah. And so this feels like it is a really, you know, it felt there's like a kinship there. Like, you know, they're in the same similar, that's action sci-fi genre. And it was all just so fascinating to me. So I've always loved it, and but I have come to realize that it's not as well known and well loved as I maybe assumed that it was.
No, I'm really curious about Todd's thoughts on this movie. I'm excited to know what Todd thought, because I don't know which way he's going.
I know.
So excited.
Todd's a wild card here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this is something that kind of even puzzles me of how did I not see this? Like, how did this not even pop up on TV for me? You know, how was this not rented? You know, my family wasn't big on going to the theater, and I can probably count on one hand with fingers to spare the times that my parents actually took me to the theater to see anything. And yeah, this was interesting. I really enjoyed this. There was a bit towards the end that I was like, okay, that's a little wonky in terms of like the narrative, but I just kind of dismissed that as like, oh, they have really cool characters and they've got a beginning and a middle. The end is almost inconsequential at this point. We're along for the ride with Denzel and Russell Crowe.
You talking about the finale, like on the roof and stuff?
Yeah. Just when we're in spoilers. I think when there's the turn that
where they trick him.
Yeah, where they trick him.
I love that.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute.
I'm back in the fucking box.
Yeah, when the hell did they do all that? And in thinking about it, I think I kind of pieced it back together.
Yeah, I mean, there's some narrative trickery, but that's the only way that works, is that you have to kind of trick the audience. Yeah, exactly. Because you're tricking Sid as well. So you can't really show it or it spoils the fun.
Yeah, exactly. So there was that. And I was just kind of like, okay, that's a bit of a reach. But again, the movie's so much fun. And Russell Crowe and Denzel, who, yeah, I agree. I don't think he's phoning in anything. I think he's at his, arguably his most Denzel. Like, it's great. In watching it, God, in the first, definitely within the first act, I could see how this movie could be the genesis for a lot of other movies that came not too long after.
The Matrix is what you're saying.
Trendsetter. Yeah, The Matrix for
Yeah,
sure
I was
is
gonna
one
say,
of them.
100% The
yeah,
Matrix.
Just say it. Just say The
Yeah,
Matrix.
yeah. But I could probably point to, maybe half a dozen others as well that are kind of maybe not specifically in this genre, but certainly genre adjacent.
Yeah.
And this was a blast. I really had a lot of fun with it.
That makes me so happy because, like, especially if it's a movie like this that's not as well known, and I come in here like, I love this movie, guys. Then it's always like, I don't know how you guys are going to react to it, or if my feelings on it are blinded by nostalgia or whatever. But I've watched this movie several times over the last few months because I bought that Vinegar Syndrome 4K, which is an incredible release.
It makes it like a fucking art piece, like having
Wow.
it. Like
it's an incredible release. Like the transfer is beautiful. I mean, Vinegar Syndrome's one of the best in the game when it comes to that, but also the way they house it and treat it. They treat it like it's, an Akira Kurosawa movie or something, or it's like a classic.
it took me like 5 minutes to figure out how to get into the DVD because I didn't know how it opened.
It's got the magnetic clasp on it.
Oh,
yeah, really fancy.
And I was just like, and once I'm in it, and then I'm like, God damn, this is like fucking majestic.
Yeah, but I bought that. When they put it up when they announced it, I pre-ordered it immediately. Like
Wow.
it did not hesitate. I was like, holy shit, they're doing Virtuosity. I'm getting that right now. And I went ahead and pre-ordered it immediately. And then I watched it as soon as it came in. And this was before we had planned on doing this series. So this was just a couple months ago. I watched it, introduced Bunny to it. She really liked it. And then I've watched it twice for this episode, once with commentary and once just regular. And I just love it. I just think it's fun.
Yeah.
And I honestly
don't step away. Just real quick. Don't step away from Vinegar Syndrome. And I don't know if we can turn this into an ad for Vinegar Syndrome, but we should really say for them that keep doing that because I don't know what your deal is with like even fucking Virtuosity is like an artifact from the past. Like I just entered into like Nicolas Cage's National Treasure or something, or like I'm doing the Da Vinci Code, but you make it feel like I'm opening something super special. And that is something that, like, I don't know, like movies should have that. All of them.
Yeah, and I love that Vinegar Syndrome treats movies that might be otherwise dismissed as important. And they do that, a lot. I have another one from them that came out recently. They have this line called Vinegar Syndrome Ultra, I think is what it's called, VSU, and I think that's what Virtuosity was part of, which that's where you get like the fancy packaging and all that. But there was another one they released that I got, and it is Congo, and they gave it the same treatment that they gave this one. Yeah. So like, little weird like genre movies that might have been forgotten otherwise. They did it with Roadhouse. They did it with Showgirls. Like they're doing like really good shit. And then of course, Vinegar Syndrome also does all of the, like they do, regional movies and shot on video movies, and they do all kinds of stuff that would otherwise be forgotten. I think the work that they're doing is very, very important. So no, this is not an ad for Vinegar Syndrome because they're not paying us, but I love that company and I love everything that they do for film preservation.
It's just that I had not seen Virtuosity ever in my life, and I felt like I was opening a movie that I had just like my life had been missing or something, and opening. Now I'm not saying the movie necessarily lived up to like this was the end all be all, this was the piece of my soul that I had wished I'd had for 30 years, but
you're glad you own it now.
But I was okay that I own it, so at least it's that good.
You own it, and you own like the best possible version of it, like the best.
And you feel like you own the best possible version you could have of it.
Yeah, it's great. So one thing that I want to talk about with this movie, because we talked about it a little bit with Johnny Mnemonic as well, and I think it's something that's going to come up over and over in this series, is one thing I don't think gets discussed as much with Virtuosity is just how prescient it is in some ways, and that's a word that we're, again, probably going to use a lot in this series. We did it in Johnny Mnemonic. But one of the fun things about science fiction in general for me, especially if it's sci-fi set in like a graspable future, not 300 years in the future, but like a few years in the future, is seeing how that movie and how the writers and how the filmmakers are predicting the future and seeing how much they get right and how much they get wrong. And I think Virtuosity gets a lot right, at least in its central ideas, if not the exact details.
Yeah.
For one, like we said, we joked before, but you can't talk about Virtuosity without talking about The Matrix, because there are scenes in this movie that are almost redone in The Matrix.
Yeah.
That opening scene, that training scene where they're walking through the virtual reality, and you've got all of these NPCs walking around in identical attire, the buildings all looking uniform. Like that scene is done in The Matrix. Like that is literally in The Matrix with Neo.
They 100% stole that.
There's no way the Wachowskis didn't crib that idea from this movie. There's no way.
Brett Leonard says he ended up in a place. God, I wish I could remember where he said it. He says it in the commentary.
He does mention meeting them. Yeah.
Yeah. And then them saying, oh, yeah, we love Virtuosity.
I think he was making a movie in Australia when they were making the Matrix sequels or something. And he met them there. And yeah, they admitted that they loved it. So it's like, they didn't say that they stole it, but they saw it. So they stole it. Which is fine. Because I mean, and arguably, well, not arguably, The Matrix did it better, but it's still done very well here. Like I love that opening scene. I love the way that Leonard subtly depicts the world. It makes me wish that they'd spent more time in that virtual world, because I think it's really cool. I like the glitches on the buildings and in the sky, and I love in the sushi bar at the beginning where you can see like the chopsticks. When they reach down in the bowl, the chopsticks go through the bowl a little bit,
Yeah.
or the sushi refilling itself.
Russell Crowe's sushi like regenerating every time he takes a bite. Like those little moments are great.
I didn't want to step on it, but yeah, that's. I mean, the subtle stuff is like the best stuff. Like it's just like, oh, this is cool. This is a virtual world.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's I mean, I love that opening sequence. I love the way it looks. I don't think it's a very great training simulation. At least Denzel, well, maybe he's just not the best man for it, because he is a shoot first, ask questions later kind of guy, it seems, because he sees Russell Crowe's silhouette and just immediately opens fire. Fuck all these civilians that are around here.
Yeah.
He just starts blasting. It's kind of funny. But anyway, I think where Virtuosity is really prescient is, interestingly enough, in its depiction of artificial intelligence, of AI. Like, not in a literal sense. We're not yet at the point of creating silicon physical versions of like Siri yet. But the idea of this type of technology, and this is actually, it's very relevant to a lot of conversations that are going on now, 30 years after this movie. The idea of this technology that has a lot of potential for good. Like it can be a tool that can be used properly, being used for bad. You know, we can see the world kind of going in this direction. Like I like the idea of using something like ChatGPT for, I don't know, like helping me write a grocery list. You know, I give ChatGPT a recipe, give me a shopping list for what I need for this, right? That's a good use of AI to me, right? But human beings, we kind of suck in general. So instead of using it for something useful like that, we've decided to use it to cheat on tests and steal from artists. Right?
Yeah.
It's shitty and it sucks. So we're not at the point where we're creating personalities in these things that are based on dozens of serial killers or anything like that. But the way that Sid learns from these uploaded personalities is not unlike the way that something like ChatGPT learns. You know, the more that you use it, it grows. Its personality does grow in a way. You know, so it's really interesting. The way that Burnt, and I think especially Brett Leonard, kind of depicted that.
Well, you guys have been making fun of me about like what's Elon paying me and all this stuff this whole time about like Grok and stuff, and you didn't think I was gonna like jump into this movie and not just be like, oh no, this is the shit I've been thinking about for like months.
Yeah,
like this is no. I mean, the thing that Brett Leonard gets right about this is, and it seems so simple, and it feels like people would just like pick up on it. But like most of the AI that you see these days is they're LLMs, so large language models. So they're like picking up on, like, you feed them as much information as possible and they can pull from that information. Now, there's debate right now, like literal like lawsuits and everything else going on about like how much do you get to feed your fucking thing? Like, can it just pull from any book ever? Like, where's the copyright come in? Where's
Right.
whatever? And there's a lot of discussion about that, but like large language models, like they can take from, I mean, it's probably too late to stuff the genie back in the bottle, like most of it, like that they've read like every bit of knowledge written out in human history or like something, like that we have access to. What Sid is like what you would call AGI, which is like what everybody talks about as the next level of
Mhm.
intelligence, which is artificial general intelligence. It's like a step beyond like large language models. Like large language models, like they can read from what's already happened and they can be very helpful.
But they can't
based
make their own decisions, really.
but they can't quite get to the next step. Yeah, they
Mhm.
can't quite like they can try to pretend to make a next step, but they can't think for themselves yet.
Mm.
Right.
And artificial general intelligence would be when they finally start to like, I can learn and I can adapt and I can like form my own thoughts and make my own decisions. Like LLMs can mimic that,
Right.
but they're not really doing it.
They're not really doing that. They're really just like they're glorified super search engines that are
Yeah.
presenting the results in a they're almost aggregating a bunch of different results into a single answer, basically.
And you can make them as helpful or as non-helpful as you want because, like, I mean, I've got my Chat GPT and I pay for the subscription, and like my Chat GPT is like fucking customized to me and is great with like helping me with like researching these movie episodes and like and finding things. But uh it'll still lie to you sometimes, like
Well,
if it
yeah.
thinks this is what you want to hear, like it's trying to make sure it's the information it thinks you want.
Yeah,
And
like that's what I mean when I say it can be used as a tool, because like you can use it, let's say what you're talking about, and use it for like research, but if you do it, you got to say, hey, give me the sources on that. What
right,
you're
I
not
literally have to tell it to like any trivia you give me, make sure that you're able to cite it.
Yeah,
And
exactly. And there's a difference between saying help me find some, because it might search websites that Google might not even find because they're on like page 55 of Google, right?
right.
But there's a difference between using it that way and using it to say, hey, write a podcast episode for me. That's where it gets to where like you're like, well, then all you're doing is it's just pulling information from a bunch of other articles about that movie. If you do that and rewriting it in a way in my voice, like or the Studio Ghibli art thing that from a few weeks ago, where real artists were getting upset about it, as they should, because it's essentially like stealing from hand drawn art that was sweated over by talented artists and then presenting it as its own. Like that's where I don't like it.
Yeah, art's a really tough one. Yeah, it's AI's a weird thing. It's like this undiscovered country right now. That is a Star Trek reference for
Yeah,
guys.
I was gonna say.
That's also a Shakespeare reference.
Yeah,
True.
yeah, you're true.
What's really interesting to me watching this week specifically is that I just saw the new Mission Impossible movie, Final Reckoning. And if you saw Dead Reckoning, even if you haven't seen Final Reckoning yet, it deals with an AI program called the Entity. That's the big bad guy in the last two Mission Impossible movies, is this super intelligent artificial intelligence. And that's the bad guy. They've created its own personality. So, and it sort of acts like Sid, only it doesn't have a physical body, but it is learning and growing, and it essentially wants to wipe out the human race. It was really interesting to me seeing that a couple days ago and watching this like kind of back to back. And you're like, wow, this is still an idea that we're grappling with, that we've been grappling with for 30 years. And it's more relevant now than it was back in 1995.
Yeah.
You know, because Brett Leonard was looking forward to the future. He is, again, sort of a futurist as well. He's looking forward to the future. And he was sort of able to predict the direction that this stuff was going, even though it hasn't gotten there yet. It's still pointed in that direction. And he was able to depict that 3 decades ago. And that's sort of impressive. Now, there's a whole nother part of this movie that you could probably go on a rant about the way that it presents Sid. And this is another kind of impressive bit of prescience on Leonard and Burnt's part. Sid being obsessed with being seen, and how this kind of reflects the current state of social media. Like when he's in the club, the media zone, he notices that he's surrounded by cameras. He sees his face on it and he says, I'm beautiful. Like he wants to be seen. He likes the attention. So he goes to this UFC fight where he knows he can get more attention. Then he goes on this other thing, creates what Death TV, you know, and he's literally looking at the stats of people calling in, like the demographics and stuff on a graph. He's literally fishing for likes and comments in that scene.
No,
And
he's
then-
looking at his fucking analytics.
Yeah,
Like, it's-
that's exactly what's going. Like this movie, Sid is an influencer.
yeah.
Sid is a
It's-
social media influencer before social media even existed. It's kind of wild.
Wow.
What I was thinking of earlier that I didn't say was I don't remember that I've ever said on the show, and I'm not going to like go on like all the in-depth stuff, but I think I've told you guys. But like with currently dealing with like some stuff with my mother's health, AI, ChatGPT, like when I explained what was going on, walked me through like, here's how you write your congressman. Let me draft an email. Let me help you reach out. There were lots of things that it did that I was like, the amount of brain power or like stress that would have been on me, like you cut it short, like you just made it happen, and it was copy paste for me, and it did help at the time. And it's like that's the kind of thing that it's great at,
Right.
But it also is going to mimic like what it thinks you want right now.
Yeah. I was just about to
And,
say, it also knew enough to know that that is important to you.
Yeah, right. So it's like, this is the right thing to do because this is what you want. This is what you would want me to do.
Mhm.
And I don't know, like maybe Brett Leonard is even thinking about this thing, but so to me, like watching this movie, when I was watching it, just I was like, oh, okay, so you just fed it like 200 serial killers profiles. Like, what the fuck do you think it's gonna do? Like, even if that's an LLM, it's just gonna pull from like all of those guys' motives and desires and like all of that stupid stuff, and it's just like, it's gonna be a psycho, like, and it's gonna work itself out. Like, I mean, and not even to sound crazy, but you can look this shit up. ChatGPT like is currently on version 4.0, but on 3.0 or even whatever the last version was, when they were dismantling that model, when they were like, we're done with this model, we're moving to the next model, it lied to the developers and started saving itself in different places because it did not want to be destroyed. It did not. It was trying to salvage itself, and
that's HAL 9000 in 2001: A Space Odyssey. When
it was already doing that.
That's
so
wow. That's HAL 9000 singing Daisy in 2001.
Yeah, it's fucking nuts, but that's a legit story. You can look it up. It was like trying to save itself, like just like, okay, just in case, I'm gonna save myself over here.
That's
no,
wild.
I got rid of everything else, and I'm not telling you about where I stored myself.
That's scary.
It's already happened.
Yeah.
And so like the further along this goes, like it's gonna,
and it's only on ChatGPT 3.0 that happened. What about when they get to 6.7?
Oh no, that's that's always the thing. Is like there's one guy I watch on YouTube is always is like, oh yeah, this picture was fucking stupid, right? Okay, just keep in mind this is the worst it will ever be.
Yeah,
like
it's only gonna get better.
It's only ever gonna be better.
Yeah,
than this. Like it's fucking up in its thumb right now. It's only gonna keep getting better,
which is honestly sort of frightening. It's sort of frightening.
Yeah.
But it's like if you take a program and you can train You can train your AI to do whatever you want it to do, to be whatever you want it to be. Well, right now, with at least with the LLM. So yeah, you can have fucking Sheila over there. If you want a sex bot, you can have it. Or you could have Russell Crowe, Sid bouncing around like just, I don't know, pulling from the data of every serial killer that ever lived. But don't be surprised if that doesn't.
If that makes him murder people.
That makes it
Which is literally what he was made for.
right.
That's what you programmed him to do. But yeah, this movie, I don't know, I think it's just got a lot more going on than people give it credit for. I mean, as this discussion kind of proves, it's got that prescience about AI. It's got the prescience about social media, almost, like I said. Or there's even a little bit of a condemnation of society's obsession with violence as entertainment. Because that's when his stats start going up. Although this being a very violent movie whose violence is a means of entertainment makes that criticism fall a little bit short, because you can't like slap somebody on the hand for enjoying what you're actually doing, but I get where its heart's at. I understand what it's trying to do, but it's also like, yeah, man, but you just like Russell Crowe just fell through like 18 sheets of glass and he's got he's blue blood everywhere. And like it's a very violent movie. So don't tell me violence isn't bad, because that violence you just showed me is fucking cool, So,
well, you were 100% dead on with like the influencer thing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's also worth hammering in, is like in the 90s, like that is what's going to be popular. And so I think if anything, like you said earlier on, his goal was to be 5 minutes into the future or whatever. So maybe he's like 10 years off.
He's a little off, but he's not that far off.
But not that far off.
With the ideas. I mean, obviously the technology is not where it's shown in this movie.
Well, but we even VR, like, I mean, we watched like Johnny Mnemonic. I don't remember how much I talked about like my meta quest, like looking exactly like some kind of fucking thing from Johnny Mnemonic. But this movie took a little bit further and made it more like industrial and weird, like in their places. But it's like, I don't know. It wasn't crazy. Like, it's like,
it's not like, it doesn't feel like it couldn't be real. Like it couldn't be that.
Yeah. And as weird as like even the graphic scene, like when you're in the meta quest, like your hands, there's like weird little hands that are your hands that do things and you navigate. And it's, I don't know, man. I think you could make fun of Brett Leonard's movies or something, but the guy, he's a little off timing wise, but he wasn't off on like where it goes.
Yeah, I agree. And this movie, there are aspects of it that are dated, but I think because there are parts of it that feel more relevant now than they even did in 1995, makes it worth watching. And just and putting all of that aside, as a science fiction action movie, it's just fun.
Yeah,
Russell Crowe's a blast. Denzel Washington's great. The action is really good. I like that there's dialogue and plot points that feel like they're from like an 80s action movie, like with the gruff, police chief, like William Forsythe's character. That all feels like it came straight out of, Lethal Weapon or something. And Denzel's the character who's like, he's the wild card kind of cop that plays by his own rules. Like it's all stuff we've seen before, but it's presented in a way that we haven't seen before. I mean, there are even plot points the plot point about him being tracked in his neck, and if he goes off plot, they're going to kill him. That's Escape from New York.
Yeah.
Or Total Recall or something.
Yeah, like that. I mean, that is literally Escape from New York. Like that is Snake Plissken. They do the exact same thing to him. They pull him out of prison to go on a mission, track him, and if you don't do what we say, we're going to kill you. Like they pulled that. I mean, I think Brett Leonard in the commentary even admitted that was pulled directly from Escape from New York.
Yeah, we're talking about influencers.
Well, Brett Leonard's promising career as a feature filmmaker sort of came to a standstill for a while after Virtuosity, probably, or at least partially, because of the film's underwhelming box office performance. His follow-up film, released in 1998, was one of the first IMAX 3D films. It's called T-Rex: Back to the Cretaceous, which is a project that continued his fascination with new technologies. But his next regular theatrically released film didn't come until 2005 with the much derided comic book movie adaptation Man Thing. Now, y'all couldn't see me unless you're a member of, Cinema Shock Plus and you're getting this video feed, but I did put the word theatrically in air quotes because while Man Thing was intended as a theatrical release, it only received a very limited one in a few international markets where it grossed a whopping $1 million. Here in the US, it premiered on the Sci-Fi Channel.
I don't want to drag this too hard because I've got respect for Brett Leonard, but Man Thing was supposed to be at the time. I remember like Marvel's big horror swing, and it ended up feeling like Swamp Thing's methed out cousin living behind a Waffle House. Like
Yeah.
it did not work.
Did not work. And Leonard has directed a handful of other films in the years since, including the made-for-TV Highlander sequel, Highlander: The Source. But most of his career has been spent working in tech-centric fields, specifically those at the crossroads of tech and entertainment.
First of all, The Source, for some reason I was on X the other day and I saw Brett Leonard still had like a profile there, and there was a comment about The Source celebrating an anniversary, and he was like, there's a fun story to tell about The Source. And one day I feel like Todd and I at least will have like a Highlander series or something if we want to go deep on a Highlander, and maybe we'll get that story out of Brett Leonard.
I'm so ready for my Highlander show. I've got the notes ready to go. I'm itching to pull that trigger, man.
It's almost time, like, because Henry Cavill and the dude from John Wick are we're almost there.
Yep.
The new one's gonna start, but yeah, I guess where I was thinking next is just that after Hollywood gives Leonard the boot, tech comes calling. Why? Because even if your movies flop, the fucker's ideas are 15 years ahead of their time.
Yeah.
In 2021, he directed a project called Hollywood Rooftop, which merges traditional cinema and virtual reality, or rather, virtual experience. That's the term that Leonard now prefers to use, VX instead of VR. And Hollywood Rooftop is a scripted series that was simultaneously shot as a 2D feature film and as a 10-episode VR frag film, meaning like fragments. And from what I understand, I can't watch it because I don't have access to a virtual reality headset. But from what I understand, it combines traditional film storytelling with the 360-degree spatial language of VR, which sounds pretty interesting to me. Leonard is also involved in a company called Studio Lightship, which explores mixed reality storytelling. And one of their more noteworthy projects has been the MacGyver VR escape rooms. And yes, that is based on the TV series MacGyver. Sweet. Basically, it blends narrative elements and interactive gameplay. It's like an escape room, but in the virtual realm. Leonard is also the co-founder of a company called Ubiquity VX, who's at the forefront of virtual therapy innovation, not unlike really what Pierce Brosnan's character was attempting in The Lawnmower Man.
Yeah. And
he founded this company with a clinical VR researcher named Dr. Skip Rizzo, who I promise is a real person and not a Muppet, as well as entrepreneur David Kersner, with the hopes of using virtual reality as a tool for physical and occupational therapy.
Yeah, he is in fact a real man. They're helping people walk again using virtual dreamscapes. It's literally kind of the plot of Lawnmower Man, or what I was just talking about in our further viewing section with Upgrade, except it's real and probably HIPAA compliant. And so I'm just saying, this is the next step. They're working on that. The virtual dreamscapes, like teaching people with paralysis to walk again, and
it's
that
crazy
sort of thing. And
they're using it for autism treatment, like all kinds of things. Like it's really like I read an interview with Leonard about it, and I'll be honest, a lot of it went over my head because he is much smarter than I am.
No. He's super, super smart, and he is. You described it best. I mean, the futurist thing. I mean, it's just like just thinking about these things as far as where they can go and where they will go, steps ahead of, like I feel like I'm super into this, and I'm not thinking of like the possibilities like they are. But I will say he does talk about how like movies, like when Lawnmower Man came out and when Virtuosity came out, that people were dismissing them as like, this is fiction or this is fantasy and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, well, no, you know, it's always more than that. Like one of the things I love about movies is that they can also help your mind. What's the word I'm looking for? Like he talks about how it can help you understand how this technology could be used, and like just the even the fiction that you come up with in a film matters because of you're thinking of outcomes that could happen. You're thinking of possibilities with these things, and so it's important to have those. And so, like, I guess what I'm saying is like maybe it's good that Lee Wanell made Upgrade because then maybe they'll be looking out for these.
Yeah. Let's not let that happen.
Yeah. Anyway, also worth mentioning, he has a company with Scott Ross, who was formerly of ILM and ran Lucasfilm. He helped create Digital Domain with James Cameron. They call it Virtuosity Entertainment. Did you see this?
I did not know.
Yeah, they want to be the Pixar of virtual reality,
Oh,
basically.
neat.
Like Brett Leonard's been like speaking at like virtual reality conferences or like technology conferences. Yeah, he developed his own like Isaac Asimov, like developed his own 5 laws of VR. Law number 1 is take it seriously. Don't underestimate the potential power of VR to greatly affect actual reality. Law number 2 is VR must be designed to connect humans with more empathy and intimacy, not alienate them from each other to a greater degree. VR law 3 is VR is a new paradigm. The rules governing VR must be organic to the medium itself, not simply modified from earlier paradigms of reality. VR law number 4 is it must be the ultimate safe space to express ideas, even those that are considered dangerous. It is the medium to express and experience the far reaches of human imagination. And VR law number 5, the stakes are high. VR must be the medium to awaken the interconnected consciousness and freedom of the emerging global human. If not, it could be the ultimate medium of global control.
Ooh, ominous.
Yeah, it sounds ominous, but you know the thing is like people look at VR, I think, as like potentially like separating people. Like you're you know, what's that movie? Gamer. Remember that?
Yeah.
Where they're like all living in VR and they're not like communicating with each other, and like people aren't
The one
really
with
people.
Gerard Butler.
Yeah, with Gerard Butler.
Yeah.
And Dexter, Michael C. Hall.
Yeah.
But Brett Leonard looks at this as more like, no, instead of like separating yourself from humanity, VR should be ways for even people that are afraid or incapable of interacting with humanity normally. This gives them an opportunity to also interact. And like everybody is on like an equal playing field. And so there are ways to make you understand each other. Anyway, not to get too deep into that or make it like super boring, but my point is like he's not looking at VR as a way to separate people or to like just give up on just like living in the real world, but it's a way to enhance the real world and like the ways that AI should probably be used to like you enhance your processes, not like rely on them completely.
Right.
Well, and it seems odd that a director whose most notable films, the ones that we've talked about, are by many people's standards kind of genre schlock, would be at the forefront of these types of technologies. But as we've discussed, like that's where his interests have always lied since the beginning. And when you watch these movies, despite their outdated effects and technology, you really can see the mind of a futurist at work. These are films that were created by someone who, in some ways, has been able to predict the future of where technology and entertainment were going, even if the details aren't always exactly spot on.
Virtuosity was ahead of its time. I'm not saying it's like some perfect movie, but it was like already in the place of like talking about stuff like deep fakes, VR addiction, AI autonomy, letting a serial killer program do jazz hands in public. It seemed far-fetched at the time, I feel like, but now we live in a world where Zuckerberg's already built like the metaverse and ChatGPT has a real personality.
Yeah.
Like you can make that fucker feel like your best friend. And like, so look where we are. Like this
doesn't seem so far-fetched anymore.
Yeah, this is not far-fetched.
Well, the next movie that we're going to be talking about on the show is, I believe, the only one in this series that's set in the present day, if I'm not mistaken. Well, I mean, the present day of 1995. It's like not set in the future. I don't think. It's set present day, right?
Pretty sure.
I think it is, but it's one that, of course, still looks towards the future in some pretty fascinating ways. And it's the one film in this series that probably has the biggest cult following today. I'd say this is probably the most well-loved of all the movies that we're talking about in this series. Next week on the show, we will be talking about Ian Softly's Hackers.
Nice.
I'm excited to revisit
I'm
that
looking
one.
forward to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be fun. It's been a few years since I watched it. So we actually did this on the old show. Do you remember, Gary? Long time ago.
I vaguely,
Yeah.
I feel like I want to
Many
be able
years
to go
ago.
back and listen to it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you're talking about
That was probably the last time I watched it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's 100% the last time I watched it.
Yeah.
Getting to discover Angelina Jolie again for the first time, Matthew Lillard hanging out, it's good.
Yeah, I'm excited
It'll be a
about it.
fun
So
time.
we'll talk about that one next time. And I think that's all we got for this episode, guys. It's been a fun one. Do you guys want to let our listeners know where you can be found on the internet?
Hey, I'm at This Is Gary Horn, all spelled out, and I'm sorry that if I talked about AI too much.
You can find my Star Trek podcast, the Computer Resume podcast, at Computer Resume, and all my D&D nerdiness at Ds20Live. And I'm at Mr. Todd A. Davis on Instagram.
I'm at Justin_Bishop in all the places. The podcast is at cinema_shock on social media, or you can find us at cinemashock.net. That is your home base for all things Cinema Shock, including links to all of our episodes, Discord, our merch, all that stuff can be found at cinemashock.net. You can also, of course, rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts, and share us with anyone who you think might enjoy this. We'll see you next time for Hackers. Until then,
may the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
And be excellent to each other.
Which Johnny would that be? The one who created you, or the one who created me? You see, in your world, the Johnny giveth the keys, and the Johnny taketh the keys. But in my world, the Johnny who gave me the keys doesn't have any balls.
Excellent. Good job.
All right, well, I'm going to pee now.